What if your sexual desire isn't a sin to suppress or a pleasure to chase, but a message from your soul? Carl Jung didn't just study dreams and symbols. He believed your lust could lead you to love, creativity, even spiritual awakening. But only if you dare to face it. Ready to find out why? Part 1. The Monster in the Mirror. Jung's Hidden War with Desire. Let me tell you a story. Not the kind of story with swords and dragons, but one with something far more dangerous: repressed desire. In 1898, a young Carl Gustav Jung was dissecting cadavers in the basement of the University of Basel. He was just 23, a medical student obsessed with the human mind. But no book could prepare him for what he was truly about to face: himself. As he sliced open bodies during the day, Jung's nights were filled with disturbing dreams. Strange sexual visions, dark figures, overwhelming temptations. What was this force, he wondered? It didn't seem moral. It didn't seem rational. And yet, it was undeniably hum. You see, Jung wasn't raised to explore his desires. He was raised to suppress them. His father was a quiet, broken pastor. His mother spoke to ghosts. Carl grew up surrounded by religious guilt and silence, where sexual curiosity was taboo, even dangerous. But here's where things get interesting. Jung didn't do what most people do: run from the monster. He turned around and stared it in the face. The forbidden act. Around the same time, Europe was in the grip of moral panic. Victorian values reigned. Masturbation was treated like a disease. Doctors warned it would drain the vital forces. Parents punished their children for touching themselves. Abstinence was framed as purity and desire as corruption. Freud, Jung's mentor, saw things differently. He believed repression of sexual instincts was the root of most neuroses. His talking cure was designed to uncover those buried urges and free them. But Jung? He took it further. He believed that sex wasn't just biological or psychological. It was spiritual. Not repress, not indulge, transform. Jung wrote, "The sexual instinct is something very peculiar. It is not a mere appetite. It is something creative, something like an inspiration." To him, masturbation or total abstinence were two sides of the same problem. They both cut you off from transformation. One side, indulgence, kept you trapped in instinct. The other, repression, poisoned the unconscious, turning your unexpressed desire into fear, rage, even madness. So Jung didn't tell people to stop or let go. He told them to dialogue with their desire. Imagine this. You sit in a dark room with your own lust. Instead of pushing it down, you talk to it. Why are you here? What do you want from me? What do you offer if I don't fear you? This wasn't metaphor. Jung believed you could actually meet your desires in dreams, in symbols, in fantasies, and through that inner dialogue, transform them. Not into guilt, not into pleasure, but into power. A new alchemy. Jung borrowed the concept of sublimation, a psychological process where raw, primal energy is transformed into something higher. A painter turns heartbreak into a masterpiece. A monk channels lust into meditation. A writer molds sexual frustration into poetry. This, Jung said, is the true path. Not repression, not indulgence, but alchemy. And it all begins with recognizing that sexual energy isn't evil, it's neutral. Like fire, it can burn your house down or light your. But here's the catch. If you ignore it, if you bury it, it doesn't go away. It becomes your shadow, the part of you that acts out in secret, sabotages your relationships, and haunts your dreams. And Jung knew that all too well. The Confession. In his red book, a private journal he kept hidden for decades, Jung admitted, "The spirit of the depths took my understanding and all my knowledge and placed them at the service of the inexplicable and the paradoxical." He confessed to visions filled with erotic imagery, temptations, battles with his own anima, the inner feminine, who seduced and challenged him. This wasn't sin. This wasn't shame. This was the soul trying to grow. And that, perhaps, is the secret no one told you. Your desire is not a flaw. It's a force. But unless you learn to listen, it will speak in nightmares. Part 2. The Seduction of the Anima. Jung's Secret Guide to Love and Lust. Last time, we left Jung standing in the shadows of his own desire. Not running, not repressing, but staring straight into the fire. But what did he see there? He saw her. Not a real woman. Not someone with a name or address. But a presence. A force. a psychic image Jung would spend the rest of his life chasing, analyzing, interpreting. He called her anima, and once she entered his life, nothing would ever be the same. Meet the anima. In Jungian psychology, the anima is the inner feminine that lives inside every man, just as the animus is the inner masculine inside every woman. The anima isn't just a symbol. She's a portal to your soul, to your creativity, to your hidden longings. She can appear in dreams as a beautiful stranger, a temptress, a goddess, a child, a witch. Sometimes alluring, sometimes terrifying, but always meaningful. Jung believed that when a man represses his emotions or ignores his deeper needs, the anima grows darker, turning seductive, manipulative, or even destructive. But when embraced consciously, she becomes a muse, a guide, a bridge to inner wholeness. The anima in dreams. Let's take a look at one of Jung's actual dreams, one he recorded during the intense period of self-exploration that led to the Red Book. I found myself in a library. A red book fell from a high shelf. I picked it up. A woman was standing there, pale, with dark hair and eyes that looked through me. She said nothing, but I felt known. That woman, unnamed, mysterious, would appear in different forms throughout Jung's life. Not only in dreams, but in waking fantasies, meditations, visions. He didn't interpret her as literal. He didn't pathologize her. He listened, because Jung believed the psyche is alive and filled with voices that modern life tries to silence. Sexuality as soul movement. This is where Jung takes a very different path from Freud. Freud saw sexual desire as rooted in the body, a drive for pleasure and release. Jung saw it as something deeper, a movement of the soul. To Jung, sex wasn't just a physical urge. It was the psyche's call to integration. That longing you feel, that aching attraction, that fixation on someone you barely know. It's not just lust. It's the anima or the animus knocking on the door. And when you ignore that, when you reduce sex to mechanics or suppress it entirely, the psyche revolts. It sends you symbols. It sends you longing. It sends you dreams. Until you finally pay attention. From obsession to integration. Let's talk about projection. You ever fall head over heels for someone, fast and hard, like you've known them forever? Chances are, you're not in love with them. You're in love with a part of yourself you've never met before. That's projection. And it's how the anima often appears, through obsession, romantic idealization, or even unhealthy infatuation. Jung warned that if you don't become conscious of the anima, she can possess you, make you fall for people who are totally wrong, or destroy relationships with impossible expectations. But if you recognize her for what she is, a symbol, not a person, then the energy she brings becomes transformative. Desire becomes dialogue. Lust becomes learning. Sex becomes soul work. Celibacy and liberation. Now here's the twist. Jung was not anti-sex. He believed that suppressing sexual energy entirely, like in extreme celibacy, can backfire. But he also warned against being possessed by sexuality, turning into what he called a slave of the flesh. He saw abstinence as useful only when it serves a greater integration, not as punishment, not as purity. In his words, where love rules, there is no will to power. And where power predominates, their love is lacking. Real liberation, Jung believed, comes from understanding your sexual energy, not from acting it out or shutting it down. The path ahead. So where does this leave us? Carl Jung was not interested in quick answers. He didn't give out rules. He gave out maps to the unconscious, to the symbolic life, to the strange and sacred force that pulses beneath every sexual urge. And at the heart of it all stands the anima, seductive, dangerous, divine. She is not here to shame you. She is not here to save you. She is here to wake you up. And if you dare follow her, you might just discover the real reason desire exists at all. Part 3. The Alchemy of Lust. How Jung turned desire into spirit. Lust is dangerous. It can burn down marriages. It can wreck careers. It can drive people mad. But Carl Jung saw something else hidden inside that fire. Potential. Not to destroy, but to transform. Because Jung didn't believe sexual energy was a problem to fix. He believed it was raw material. For art. For love. For the soul. What alchemists got right. You've probably heard of alchemy, that ancient attempt to turn base metals into gold. But Jung believed alchemy wasn't really about chemistry. It was psychological. The alchemists weren't just melting lead. They were exploring the human psyche, wrapped in symbols. And the lead they were trying to purify? That was raw instinct, unprocessed emotion, lust, rage, obsession, fear. The gold was consciousness, wholeness, meaning. This is where Jung's genius came in. He took the metaphors of alchemy and applied them to real, living people. He saw sexual energy not as shameful, but as the prima materia, the original substance that the soul must work with. Sexual energy equals psychic energy. Here's a key idea Jung introduced. Libido is not just sex drive. It's life energy. In fact, he disagreed with Freud here. Freud said libido was fundamentally sexual. Jung said no, libido is symbolic, creative, spiritual. It can express itself through sex, but also through art, ambition, friendship, invention, devotion. The key, Jung said, is not to waste it or repress it, but to redirect it. The creative explosion. Let's look at Jung himself. In his 40s, Jung broke ties with Freud and plunged into a deep, terrifying inner journey, the period that would lead to his Red Book. He was flooded with visions, fantasies, dreams, many of them erotic, disturbing, divine. He didn't run. He wrote them down. He drew. He painted. He dialogued with his inner figures, including powerful female images, his anima, in many forms. He channeled what others might call madness or lust into a decades-long explosion of creativity. The years when I was pursuing my inner images were the most important in my life. Everything else is debris. That's not poetry. That's Carl Jung explaining the alchemy of desire. What happens when you don't transform it? But what happens if you don't do this inner work? Jung warned that untransformed libido doesn't stay quiet. It mutates. It leaks. It distorts. You start chasing pleasure endlessly, but never feel satisfied. You fall into compulsions, addictions, or meaningless hookups. Or you repress everything and become cold, bitter, resentful, with no creativity, no passion, no soul. In both cases, the libido stagnates. To Jung, that was the real danger, not sex itself, but blocked transformation. Modern sexual liberation isn't. Fast forward to now. Sex is everywhere. OnlyFans, Tinder, hookup culture, sex positivity. So are we free? Jung would say, not really. Because most of what we call sexual liberation today is just the other side of repression. It's still outside ourselves. It's still unconscious. You're not choosing your desires. You're being driven by them. You're still possessed, not by guilt anymore, but by compulsion. Real freedom, Jung believed, isn't about acting out your impulses. It's about understanding them, integrating them, owning them, turning heat into light. So how do we do it? Jung's answer wasn't a 5-step guide. It was a process, one he called individuation. It means becoming whole, facing your shadow, meeting your anima or animus, listening to your dreams, living symbolically, and yes, working with your sexual energy, not denying it or worshiping it. You take the raw fire and forge it into something a song, a story, a relationship, a spiritual practice, a deeper version of yourself. This is the alchemy Jung spoke of, not turning lust into shame, but turning lust into light. Jung's warning and hope. Jung never claimed to master this completely. He struggled. He doubted. He made mistakes. But he knew one thing for sure. The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed. The conflict with desire is not your enemy. It's your teacher. And if you engage with it consciously, without fear, without shame, you might just find that what you thought was chaos was actually the beginning of your inner cosmos. Part 4. Shadow and Eros. What happens when you deny your desire? What if the very thing you're trying to suppress is the thing that's been controlling you all along? Carl Jung had a name for this unseen force, the hidden self we refuse to acknowledge, but that lives in us anyway. He called it the shadow. And when it comes to sexual desire, the shadow isn't just lurking. It's watching you. The birth of the shadow. Every child is born whole. But then the rules come. Good boys don't cry. Good girls don't think like that. Nice people don't talk about sex. Piece by piece, we cut off parts of ourselves. We bury feelings. We hide desires. We reject anything that doesn't fit the image we're told to become. But those parts don't die. They go underground. into the unconscious. And there, they wait. This hidden self, the part of you that holds your shame, lust, rage, envy, and wild imagination. That's the shadow. And the more you deny it, the more powerful it becomes. The shadow and lust. Jung believed repressed sexuality is one of the most potent sources of shadow. It doesn't vanish. It festers. And then it sneaks out in ways you don't expect. Sudden anger at people who are too free. Secret obsessions. Porn addictions. Sabotaging relationships. Dreams you're too ashamed to talk about. Or worse, projecting your shame onto others, punishing them for what you won't admit in yourself. Jung warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And when it comes to erotic energy, denial doesn't purify you, it splits you. You become two people, one who performs goodness, and one who acts out in the dark. The public shadow. Look at society. Where sexuality is most repressed, you'll often find the most shadow. Moral panic, sexual scandals, priests breaking vows, public figures caught in private shame. Jung saw this as no accident. He believed that when a culture represses desire, it doesn't eliminate it. It amplifies it, until it explodes, usually in destructive ways. He wrote, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as real. In other words, if you don't deal with your lust, it might deal with you, in the worst way possible. Loving the shadow. But here's the miracle. The shadow isn't evil. It's not out to destroy you. It's wounded. It's powerful. And, most importantly, it holds the key to your full potential. Think of every artist, writer, dancer, or lover who ever tapped into their dark side and turned it into something beautiful. That's what happens when you stop running from your sexual energy and start listening to it. Desire is a door. Jung saw Eros, the life force of desire, as not just about sex. It was about connection. It was about becoming whole. When you meet your shadow, when you face your desire without judgment, you don't become immoral. You become integrated. You stop being a fragmented shell, bouncing between guilt and indulgence, and start becoming authentic, able to hold passion, vulnerability, strength, and purpose. This isn't liberation in the modern sense of do whatever you want. This is liberation in the ancient sense. Knowing thyself. The final invitation. Carl Jung never told people to chase their desires blindly, but he also never told them to bury them. He said, dialogue, transform, alchemize, because your desire is not the enemy. It's a doorway to your creativity, to your shadow, to your soul. And if you have the courage to walk through that door, you may find that what once felt like temptation was actually a teacher. If this journey into Jung's vision of sexual energy stirred something in you, don't run from it. Explore it. Share this video, subscribe, and let us know, what does desire mean to you? More videos on the shadow, dreams, and soul work coming soon.